Well, let's head on up to Altamont, where Charlie is dealing with some kind of issue with his Ford Explorer. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, hi Larry. I've got a '03 Expedition that I don't use very much. Replaced the battery about exactly a year ago, and admittedly let it sit for about 4 months. Wouldn't start, had it jumped. I drove it around for a half an hour or so, and the next day, all I could get was clicking when I put in the key. Jumped it up again, drove it around, had the same problem, and so I'm just wondering why I'm not able to drive the vehicle at this point.
Well, it runs and drives okay, right?
Beautifully.
Yeah, just good. The battery goes dead after it sets for a little bit.
Yeah, and as long as it's just a day or two or three later, might try and turn over once very weakly, and then I'm just getting clicking.
Yeah.
And if I jump it, it starts right up.
Charlie, I have ran into this before, buddy. And it wasn't on the Expedition, it was on the Navigator. And they had the same type of system on some of them. Let me tell you what will happen on these. There is a relay, and believe you me, we have, when I say we've been to school on this one, there's several things that will cause a draw. Alternator can cause a draw. A relay in the fuse and relay center can cause a draw. A lot of these things can pull juice out of the battery when the vehicle just sets stationary. But what we ran into on some Expeditions, and I say some, not all of them, some Expeditions and some Navigators, Ford put this control module in the instrument cluster. Now, the instrument cluster will work absolutely totally fine, and you would never know that there was a problem with it. But it will cause it to pull every drop of juice out of your battery when it sets. I mean, the extensive research that we had to go through in order to pinpoint this was absolutely incredible. Just to find out that it was definitely the instrument cluster that was causing the problem. And then we ran into another problem, getting an instrument cluster. We probably had 10 sent to us, used ones from salvage yards and all over the place. The problem with it was they were not equipped exactly like those very few instrument clusters that Ford had conjured up back during that time. Why they put that one control module in some of them and not the other is beyond me. But, that was what we've ran into with 02, 03, and 04 Expeditions and Navigators. And it would usually start when one had to be jump-started, or whether a battery had shorted out, or after a battery replacement. That's when we would have the customer start coming in. They haven't done anything different to the vehicle, but all of a sudden they would start developing this severe battery drain. What would probably need to be done in your case, Charlie, is we would have to go and find out where the draw is. And what we wound up doing on the last few, because we couldn't get parts to fix it with, we actually did a bypass. We actually bypassed the memory voltage going to the instrument cluster. So the only time that the instrument cluster would actually power up or get power to it is when you turn the key to the on position or when the engine was running. But if you turned it off, there was no memory going to that instrument cluster. And that's how we got rid of the drains on these things. And the folks could continue to use the vehicles. But, when you get into something like this, you're literally talking about re-engineering something in some cases. But like I said, we've already been through this. so we're one step ahead of probably anybody else on the planet. But it was a few of these, not all of them. It was really funny. We would have salvage yards. We would give them the exact same part number for these instrument clusters when they would start pulling the juice out of the battery, and we'd get them in from the salvage yard. The funniest thing was the one that came out of the vehicle weighed about 2 or 3 pounds more than the ones that they were sending us with the identical part number. And that's what threw up the red flags. We're like, why is this one so much heavier than this one, but yet they have the exact same part number? And what it was, there was a few Expeditions and a few Navigators where Ford and Lincoln, of course, at the time, were actually installing these control modules. And that one control module in there is what's causing the battery drain. And unfortunately, good luck on getting one of those. You want to talk about a needle in a haystack. But there's nothing wrong otherwise with the instrument cluster. That's why we decided just to do bypass surgery on it, get rid of the memory and have key on power only, and that fixed the problem. Now, in your case, we're going to have to actually diagnose it to pinpoint it to the instrument cluster, and that's as easy as pulling the instrument cluster out of the vehicle and let it sit out in the parking lot for 4 or 5 days and see if it still starts up. If it does, we know that we've tracked it down to the instrument cluster. It's just that simple. But getting the fix for it is usually a little bypass surgery, from your local rocket scientist, I guess is the best way to put it. But you got to draw. It'll have to be diagnosed, and like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if it's going to be something associated with the instrument cluster, with what we have been through with the O2s, O3s, and O4 Expeditions and Navigators. You let us know if we can help you, Charlie.